And I'm live. So I had the idea to do this live yesterday, and oftentimes when I do a live, which I don't do a lot, I I really think it through about what I want to say and how I want to say it. Although sometimes when I'm in the moment on live, things get a little you lose focus a little bit. So what I've been doing, I do a lot of work around my house. I really enjoy doing home improvement. I really love gardening. It's one of the things that when I bought my house, I found out was really just something that I have a passion for. I look at it as my art, but I have to tell you that I've built a paver pathway in my backyard. I've built some small little sectional walls. I've done a ton of digging and planting, and then weeding, because maintenance is a real pain in the butt too, and it's very physically demanding. Even though the load involved, like you're not always lifting a lot. Sometimes you are, because sometimes if you're filling up a wheelbarrow with lots of dirt or a bucket and all, and you have to lug it back and forth, that's a lot of weightlifting too. And it has definitely forced me to change. I've had to change the things that how I schedule my own training program, not just frequency, like how often I weightlift or other training, but also I have to alter my recovery plan based on that too. And so that was the two topics that I wanted to cover in this particular live was training frequency, and then the topic of individualization, and more specifically about functional training, because that's a buzzword that's really popular in the industry, and just from my professional opinion, it's poorly understood, and I think the public as a result also is kind of led astray or led off track as to what it actually means. So when I was doing yesterday, I spent about 2 hours, and I was getting up and down, doing some weeding and everything else, and I think back to some of the things I've had to do, like shoveling. I've used a pickaxe. Like I said before, I've had to use a wheelbarrow. I've used carried some heavy buckets and things like that. And it reminded me of some of the stuff that I see personal trainers do in gyms. And these aren't things that I do anymore, but some of them include, it's really popular for trainers to have clients carrying weight, like kettlebells over their head or by their side. And the belief by the trainers is that this is good for the shoulder, that this somehow creates shoulder stability or creates shoulder strength. And I did do some of these things, but my opinion's changed. And also I see pretty much every trainer push sleds or pull sleds, also things that I used to do, thinking that this is, I actually don't know what their specific thinking is anymore, but I know that when I did it, the belief was that pushing a sled was more, I wouldn't say quad dominant, and pulling was more hip dominant, and that's not true, actually. And then one of the ones that I see that really makes me cringe now is like sledgehammers, having clients swing that. Now, that's not one that I ever really did, because, I'll get to that in a sec. And then there was, the last one, two more that are really popular is flipping tires. And thinking, this is like, I think this came from CrossFit, I'm not sure. Probably just because when people want to make up new stuff to sell, like ideas and whatever, it needs to be kind of shocking and different for the consumer to think that this somehow means that this is really cool and it's more worthwhile than what we were doing before. And then the last one is the battle ropes. This is all, again, these are all trends that I followed at one point in my training career, but my mission has always been to learn what is the best way to train. And that was why I became a coach with King Sports International, because when I started reading Ian's material, Ian King, that is, and you can go to that website to learn more about it yourself, kingsports.net. And when I started reading his material, and then when I subsequently went to one of his seminars, I was like blown away, because it was clear to me that this man knows way more than anybody else that I had ever been talked to or been around in a seminar or in any kind of training environment. It just humbled me big time. And eventually I enrolled in his program. and it's been the best thing that I ever could have done. But anyway, so I was thinking about those things yesterday as I'm doing the garden, because it's really been brutal on my body doing some of these things around my house, like in my garden and everything else, and it doesn't allow me to train as frequently as I could before, because I have to spend a lot of time on my recovery, and I have to alter my training program to deal with the side effects that come along with in the garden. But it reminds me of a lot of the stuff that trainers are doing in the gym, like sleds, tires, ropes, and carrying kettlebells and all other kinds of, forgive me for saying, but silly shit that is labeled as helpful for people, and it also hurts me because I don't want to see people get injured. So it is your choice to do what you want to do, and if you like to do it, that's totally fine. But it's also important that you learn how to think for yourself, so that if you're doing it for enjoyment, that's one thing, but just be careful that where you get your information from. And you're seeing it everywhere on Facebook and the news now with COVID-19, right? Because you have information from conspiracy theorists, you have information from the U.S. government, and you have information from other governments around the world. You have you have different information depending on what state you live in. You have some doctors putting videos up saying one thing, blah, blah, blah. So it is important to really learn how to think, and that applies with training too. So functional has been a really hip word in training for as long as I can remember. I became a personal trainer in 2006, so this is a post-2000 trend. And it's from what I've learned from Ian is when he's the first to say that I'm aware of that training should be specific for the sport. So if you're not an athlete, that's fine. What that means is that your training just needs to be specific for you and for your goals and whatever it is you want. So if you're choosing a generic program or something like that, you're probably not going to get the best result that you could get for you or your sport. And so, but that got taken out of context because the functional training movement was born from a couple of guys who plagiarized his material, Ian King's material, because they realized they could make a lot of money, and it became a way to sell a lot of equipment. And this has kind of gotten out of hand, I think. So you have to decide for yourself what you think is appropriate and what isn't. But I wanted to put that in your mind so that you can think about it. Because when I watch an old lady swinging a hammer in the gym on a tire, I'm like, me and my client are going to go as far away as possible from that. And I'm worried that this lady's going to, what if she misses and hits her leg? Like you gotta balance like risk reward there. And so anyway, the back to the functional thing, the history of it all, it became this idea that there's some kind of training that is somehow helps it is good for all human beings. That's just missing the point, that we're all individuals and we all have a unique history of what we've done, what sports we played, what training we've done, and there is no such thing as a general exercise that is good for everybody. It's always a situational decision, and some of it is just really ridiculous, and it's causing more injuries than it is probably not helping at all that much. So I wanted to make that point. And then the last part is the frequency. I love working in my yard, and I love working around my house. I really get a lot of enjoyment from watching, being around my plants, and the beauty I get when I spend time in it is awesome. But if I'm going to spend that much amount of time in the yard, it takes a toll on my body. I'm not able to train as frequently. So when you're deciding what to do while you're at home, think about that, okay? Because you have a lot of time to think, and sometimes people make workout decisions based on emotional desire or being bored, and that might not be the best decision. So just a couple of things that I wanted to bring up. I also want to do more Facebook Lives that are training related, because I don't do them very much, and I think that I want to help people that want help, and I want to answer your questions. And so if there's any questions that you have for a future live, please let me know, and I will make it the subject of that. But if you're someone who wants to learn more about how to train, again, you can go to kingsports.net. There's a lot of books there that you can read that will help you. And if you're looking for a generic program, you're not quite ready to invest more than that, there's some books. The Get Buff series have sample programs in them. And Ian also wrote a book called The Book of Muscle that has some sample programs. And then if you're a trainer and you want to improve your craft, I can't speak highly enough of the KSI coaching program. And it goes in different levels, and there's level 0 can give you an idea of the way we roll. You can also follow me on Instagram, Trainer Tom. I post, if you're following me on Facebook, you're probably getting the same things. But anyway, check me out there, and thanks again, guys.